thank you for coming. And that's a small but perfectly formed audience that we have today. Appreciate that you have made the effort in the sort of death session on Wednesday afternoon after the conference dinner, so it's great to see you. My name is Lucy Nairn. I'm the Engagement Coordinator for the Victorian Environmental Water Holder, and it's my pleasure to welcome you here today. I'd like to start by acknowledging the country on which we're meeting, which is the country of the Wurundjeri people, and acknowledging their elders past and present. The purpose of our session today is really to try and pick your brains, I guess, is the basic truth, but also to encourage, hello Tom, I've seen you a long time, to encourage conversations between how we can best engage with anglers, because water's vital for fish, but how it gets into rivers and wetlands isn't really as simple anymore as the water cycle that was taught in schools. We know that many anglers are highly engaged with the environment, and we really want to work with them so that the benefits of water for the environment are better understood, and to encourage them to be active stewards for healthy rivers. So today's session aims to start to fill that gap, and also explore ways to empower anglers so that they can advocate widely for the water that their sport, hobby, lifestyle so desperately needs. And this is going to be quick. I was going to ask for a show of hands and of where you're from, but we might just do a super quick whip around the room, and if you could introduce yourselves so that we... You're giving me a look really quickly as to where you're from, so that we can best sort of tailor this session to you, and we can all get a good outcome from it. May I start with you over there?
My name's Adelaide. I'm from Ozfish. I will say though, I'm on the communications and marketing team, so I don't know how
we need comms people. That's what we need. So that's perfect.
Right, yeah, that's me.
Great. Moving round.
I'm Fern Hayes. I'm from the Arthur Isle Institute for Environmental Research in the new DECA department. We have a lot of aquatic expertise, others in the room. I'm also interested in this from the perspective of part of the state's, Victoria's biodiversity strategy, which has a goal that all Victorians will be connected with and acting for nature. So I think this has a role in it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Rob, I'm the chair of the Victorian Recreational Fisheries.
Nice to meet you in person, Rob.
And we've always been strong supporters of environmental water.
Yep.
And we've even got a cultural water policy now.
Fantastic. Jared.
Jared.
That's Jared.
Next, Jared Ryan. I'm an aquatic ecologist, and I work with the Arthur Isle Institute.
Steve Ryan, Glenelg Hopkins Catch Management Authority, Deputy National Resource Manager.
Great, thank you.
John Buckles, Victorian Fisheries Authority. I'm the fisheries manager for the Inland Fisheries Team.
Tom.
Tom Ryan, I'm a senior fisheries scientist at New South Wales Fisheries. Worked a fair bit in environmental water, but more recently in the research, translation and extension space.
Other Tom.
Tom Kemp, inland recreational angler.
Peter Kelly, tourism operator of Marriott Adventures, and previously was a waterway manager of catchment management authority.
Great, thank you.
Andreas Hansen, I'm at James Cook University in Queensland, the Fisheries Lab and researcher there, and I just did a project engaging the stakeholders to get data to document it, either to use a cool word, explore fishery.
Great.
Working in communications with you.
Sarina Loo, co-CEO of the Victorian Environmental
He's the tech man.
Thank you. And now I'm going to try and work out how to move to the next slide, because I didn't come up here and do it earlier. Oh, we did. So, as you all know, people engage with fish. Fish have huge social, cultural and recreational value. Jared likes to describe them as the koalas of our creeks. And a major way that people connect with nature and water in particular is through fishing. There's approximately 3 million fishers in Australia and a growing and increasingly sympathetic environmental lobby. So we are really keen to learn how to best engage with this really large group of people. We've just done introductions, I think, and so we're going to move on to a presentation from Sarina Loo, who is the CEO of the Victorian Environmental Water Holder. Prior to working at The View, Sarina was a senior public servant at the Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning for over 10 years, and her areas of expertise include environmental water management, policy and strategy development, investment, monitoring, evaluation, reporting and governance. She has a PhD in freshwater ecology and has been a past board member of the Peter Cullen Trust. She's spent many family holidays, which I'm sure she's about to tell you about, wreck fishing on Lake Macquarie in New South Wales. Would you like to join us?
Thanks, Lucy. Thanks all for coming. It's really good to be here today to be talking about how recreational anglers can so clearly benefit from engaging within the environment and healthy waterways. We have seen some really amazing talks at this conference. Under the Harnessing Recreational Stewardship and Leadership Advocacy session, this is continuing on within that theme, we've seen a lot of really good both international and national talks about how we can better engage scientists, natural resource managers, and also policy makers with recreational anglers, because ultimately we're all here because we love fish, we love fishing, and we know that fish need water. So there's been quite a lot of talks around fishermen being engaged in habitat, and today this is probably, I think, the only talk that is at this conference around that critical role that water and water for the environment plays in creating healthy waterways that hence support fish populations, that then help support fisheries and the angler experience within our waterways. So I'm going to talk a bit about water for the environment, sometimes called environmental flows, what it is and how it benefits fish, and also some of the challenges that it faces. So my granddad taught me to fish. This is Fred Walker. He lived in a house that's just in the back there, and that's me and my brother, and we spent every summer up on Lake Macquarie in New South Wales getting towed behind that boat, fishing off that boat, fishing off the jetties, catching a lot of whiting, squire, bream, the occasional leather jacket, occasional flathead. And it really did instill in me a passion for rivers, for wetlands, for healthy environments. It meant that I went on to do a freshwater ecology PhD, spent a decade doing waterway health management, policy, and now I'm at the Victorian Environmental Water Holder. And I think from my own personal experience, I can really see how getting out and engaging with waterways can then lead into, for me, a lifelong career, for others, stewardship, or just, enjoyable pastime. So I work for the Victorian Environmental Water Holder. We are a small organisation, we are a government organisation, but we're an independent statutory authority, so we're separate from the Minister. And working together with local waterway managers, so the catchment management authorities and Melbourne Water, we ensure that water for the environment provides the best outcomes that it can in rivers and wetlands right across Victoria. So we plan when, where and how much water is used in regulated rivers in 19 systems across Victoria. So a short history, why do we do this? We know many of Victoria's river systems have been modified. As populations have grown, as the state has prospered, water has been taken out of river systems to provide for towns, for industry, for food production. So now, instead of water flowing naturally through the landscape, it's captured in dams and in weirs. We have man-made channels and pipes. And so as a result, our river health has decreased. In some cases, our rivers have given up over a third, even up to half of the water for human use. So the government back in Victoria in 2004 established an environmental water reserve, and certainly through that time of the Millennium Drought, there was this real awareness of what was happening to our rivers without having specific water for environmental values. The Murray-Darling Basin Plan was then developed, and our organisation helps to deliver on Victoria's commitments under the Basin Plan, and it was obviously one of the largest programs to recover water specifically for the environment, buying back water from irrigators for use within our rivers and wetlands. So what is environmental watering? It is putting back some of the flow regime. We release water from reservoirs to improve the health of rivers and wetlands. And we do that to try and help plants and animals survive, to breed, to feed, to flourish, to move. And we can mimic some of the flows that would have naturally been there before the major reservoirs were built, but not all of them, with the amount of water that we have. But it is at least, in particular, trying to bridge that gap between the major flood events we have in dry times. We see it's really important for us to be providing refuge for fish, fish refuge, allowing these populations then to bounce back when we have wetter years like we've seen the last 3 years. And we all know that fish need water to live in. They need it to breed, to feed, to move, and water for the environment help all of these different processes. It creates habitat for fish across all stages of their life cycle. It triggers movement and breeding. It really helps fish just to survive and to thrive, improvements in water quality as well, and reductions in salinity. So at the Victorian Environmental Water Holder, we specifically target 9 native angling species with environmental watering. Grayling, which is a non-angling species, is also supported. The ones here that are highlighted in green, Murray cod, Macquarie perch, estuary perch and black brim, these 4 were found in a VR fish survey last year to be some of the top recreational angling species, and they're certainly included in the things that we target. We also know that salmon species like trout benefit by having healthier rivers. In the Goulburn River, we provide winter base flows. Those flows, directly helping trout populations there in such a popular fishing location like the Goulburn River. So 93% or 28 of Victoria's top recreational fishing reaches that can receive environmental water were watered last year. And we know that it's working through time. So this is showing you the health of the living Murray icon sites. These are big floodplain sites along the Murray River through time. And you read this a bit like a school report card. The A's mean that it's in excellent health. You get a score of B, it's in good health. C, it's fair. D, look, we know there's more work to be done. And the little spanner shows you where works have also been undertaken. And these might be like permanent pumping structures. So just to focus in on one example at the Hatter Lakes, a big pumping structure, permanent pumping structure was put in 2014. It's been used to put water into the lakes and hold it there with regulators as well. And you can see since we've done those works, put environmental water in, the health has increased through time. In comparison, in the Kundruk-Paracuta forest, similar works were done back in 2014. There's been issues actually getting the water there. There's some private land use. Some landholders didn't want flooding of their private land. The infrastructure sat there, but the water hasn't gotten into the forest, and we haven't seen those same outcomes. So for 2 sets of river red gum dominated forests, one that's receiving the water and one that's not through that same time period, you can see the difference that environmental water is making. And we also know from research that the Arthur Rylah Institute has done, I want to thank Jared for these slides, that there are particular hotspots for the recruitment of golden perch and estuary perch in the lower Darling and in the Murray River, either side of the confluence there with the Darling River. And we can use environmental flows in a coordinated effort with the Commonwealth Environmental Water Holder and the Murray-Darling Basin Authority to put pulses of water down the tributaries to attract those fish up into the Victorian tributaries and on the New South Wales side, which are popular angling locations. And we know it's working because Arthur Rylah went out and they did some tagging of silver perch and golden perch, and found that 50% of the silver perch that were tagged did move up into the estuary, into the tributaries, and then of those, 70% of them stayed there. And we also know if you don't have environmental water, there can be catastrophic impacts. This is the Lower Darling River back in 2018. There was a huge fish kill. Hundreds of thousands, if not millions of fish died due to a lack of flow. But we also know you can't just add water. It is a combination of complementary catchment management activities. You need to have those fishways to allow fish to move. You need to have fish screens over pumps. We saw Craig Boy's talk on Monday about the importance of fish screens. And these are two things that the Victorian Environmental Water Holder have specifically invested in. Craig had on his slides that the Kahuna fish screens were the first in Australia to be done. That was through investment we made to try and trial that innovative technology here in Australia. We're a bit behind the world in terms of fish screens, but it was a proof of concept. And after that, New South Wales in particular has taken off in putting those fish screens in. I think Victoria's still got to catch up a bit. And we've invested in fishways out in the Glenelg River, in the Kundruk, on the Kundruk Weir. And the place where anglers are really being involved at the moment is, of course, in the habitat restoration, putting plants in streamside zones, getting logs into rivers as well. And you need all of these things successfully. And planting trees is a really tangible action. And it's great to see anglers now getting more involved in those riparian programs. But water management has been more complicated. I'll get to that in a minute. So at the moment we engage with anglers primarily through the catchment management authorities and Melbourne Water. They have community groups that include recreational fishermen, groups and peak bodies, so VFA might be there, Verfish, Ozfish. The recreational fish can feed into the environmental water priorities for a given year. And we found in an engagement mapping study that recreational groups and environmental groups were the groups most engaged on environmental watering. These are people who are caring about the health of our river systems. We've also worked with VR Fish, putting out information through their newsletters and jointly writing articles about how water for the environment benefits native angling fish. We've worked with ARI looking at articles in freshwater fishing magazines to really target anglers and get that message out there around how water for the environment benefits fish. We funded CMAs to go out and directly engage angling groups on the ground. You'll be able to see just here over the bucket is Bluey, who's sitting right there, engaging with the Harrow Angling Club and talking to them about habitat restoration and environmental flows as they're out there doing fish monitoring programs. But water management, it's complex, it's controversial, and it's challenging. Mark Twain said, "Whiskey is for drinking and water is for fighting over." And when the Murray-Darling Basin Plan was first brought in, the draft of the plan, even though it was proposing to buy water from willing sellers, voluntarily, fully compensated, it was burnt in the streets of Griffith. You'll see it in the media all the time. In dry times, the public commentary is fierce. In wet times, it's persistent. There have been calls for royal commissions into the Basin Plan. There have been rallies along the Murray River in protest, sledging of ministers, sledging of the Murray-Darling Basin Authority and environmental water holders like myself, questions around the science of what do the lower lakes and the Coorong need. We've had this rapid expansion of almond farms in the Sunraysia region, which means water is moving through the landscape differently to how it ever was before, with a combination of environmental flows with objectives the whole way down the river system down to South Australia, and these almond farms that are big, extensive, growing and thirsty, that there is competition for channel capacity, and those channels are often things like our natural rivers, the Murray, the Goulburn, and environmental water holders. We don't have the same rights as irrigators, and we can't always move the water to where we need it, when we need it, because we don't have the same rights to the channel capacity as they do. And we know that overbank flows, they are a critical part of how freshwater ecosystems work. They go out, they bring in the carbon, they start to fuel the food webs. We see big booms in fish populations after floods. but they can be devastating for local communities, as we have seen over recent months. And so when we have conversations about environmental flows going up to a minor flood level, and that's not with having any houses inundated, to see some of those benefits of using the water that we have, we really met with resistance, particularly at this time where there's a fear of overbank flows and a real, recent memory of the devastation that that has brought with it. But it's not all doom and gloom. After those lower Darling fish deaths, there was a renewed understanding of the need to protect water for the environment and the benefits that would come to regional towns, to First Nations communities and anglers. You had fishermen coming out saying hands off the environmental flows. Community groups have been championing for greater environmental flows. So this demonstrates that the community views are really diverse. The issues are complicated, and to build support for water the environment, we need to be communicating the benefits of water for the environment in a language that people understand, because it is complicated, and from a range of voices, including angler stewards. Because when anglers speak out, other anglers listen. They don't want to hear it from government bureaucrats like myself. So we really want to have a good discussion and harness the knowledge in this room around how we can support these angler stewards to speak their truth. So in summary, environmental watering, it benefits native recreational fish. Community engagement is key. Agencies are continuing to improve the way that we do angler engagement, both at the state level with peak bottles, at the regional group at the level through catchment management authorities and Melbourne Water with those angling groups. And anglers can be powerful stewards for both habitat restoration and for water for the environment. Thank you. Any questions on that before I hand back to Lucy to move us to the Tom's talk? No? We'll have plenty of chance to have a chat when we form into a group. Thanks, Lucy.
Thanks, Sarina. So we're talking about engaging with anglers, and one of the questions is, who is your typical Victorian angler? And this is some data from the Rob, from VR Fish's latest annual survey. Yep, which is fantastic, really helpful to us and I'm sure to many people to understand who are we talking about when we're talking about typical Victorian anglers, who are the ones that we really want to reach to. There's a lot of them. 1.1 million in Victoria, is according to an Ernst & Young survey from 2020. They're predominantly male. They're an older demographic, but that could also be, people who can take the time to respond to the survey. And marine and coastal waters are fished most frequently. When you're talking about inland waters, though, the most popular target species for anglers are trout, which our next speaker will talk to you a bit more about, it's one of his loves, and Murray cod. They're the most targeted inland species. So considering that we know this about anglers, what we'd really like to know is to develop a persona or a target audience, what information they need, and also in order to really understand the benefits of water for the environment and what might motivate them to share that knowledge, and which channels they might use to do that with. And so that's going to be the focus of the workshop part of our presentation today, which we'll get to in a moment. Should have moved on, but yeah, we really want to know, should we be looking at multiple individuals or groups of anglers to improve understanding of water for the environment and its benefits? And we'd like to know which of those who do understand the benefits are likely to share information further, and those who are active stewards, people who are already involved, we suspect, in habitat restoration works, are probably going to be really good options for further engagement and disseminating further information. And having described our ideal angler steward, let's introduce you to one. Tom, if you could introduce Tom Camp, who is a recreational fisherman. He was, I'll let him tell you, but he has been involved in angler advocacy for 20 years, would you say, Tom? And been a fisherman for a very long time. If you'd like to welcome him up to tell you his story.
Thanks very much, Lucy. How's it going, guys? I know it's the end of the conference. You don't really want to be, after a Sarina presentation, too much from me. I'm actually a trout man. I go home, JD, to catch real fish. Apologise for that. Originally a Kiwi, but I'm naturalised Aussie now. I love the Victorian high country. It's fantastic, and get up there every opportunity I can. So that's just a taste of what we get back home. I've had a little bit to do with different things, fly fishing clubs, different stuff on the way through there. Probably the most significant one that's relevant today would be the Wild Trout Conference. We had some issues 10 years ago, and VFA responded with some funds out of RFL, Arthur Ryler. We had some extensive engagement with rec anglers, particularly inland fisheries guys, and it's probably from that the awareness of the environment, the opportunities we have to participate in protecting it and leaving a legacy for our kids. And that's probably the thing that's motivating me the more older I get. And real quick. I would have said that the growing angler awareness that's occurring has really come out of some of these conferences as well. There's the native fishery conference as well. Has been growing, and that's motivated anglers to get into active habitat restoration. But as Sarina's already alluded to, most of that is directed pretty much to streamside veg and in-stream works. And the idea of water, which is the critical thing, is probably only just coming into people's thinking. And I actually think it's probably the reason why I've partnered a little bit from an angling perspective to assist View to get their message out, is if we ain't got water, we ain't got no fish. And we've got plenty of challenges coming up to deal with, which have come up. So I think View have an opportunity to take some real leadership in this particular area and liaise with effectively all of the different stakeholders, both government, non-government, and most importantly, as we've heard from Sarina, we're looking to inspire, motivate and encourage anglers to get involved with this stuff. And if we can do that, I think that we've got an opportunity to move government, move funding and all the different things. I probably wanted to just mention really where we're up to in terms of View coming in on the scene, getting actively involved with anglers from my perspective, is probably about 4 or 5 years ago. And there was a habitat program sponsored by DELP, about $1 million, which was a riparian habitat program working with recreational anglers. And that began to put some really good legs on relationships and collaboration with the CMAs, or the Water Management Catchment Authorities. I said that right, didn't I, Sarina? I'm getting all the lingo right. You've got to go hang out with all these government crew. And so that actually probably, that came out of the wild trout awareness and mobilising fishermen, and also out of the native side, particularly because environmental water is pretty much below the weirs, as opposed to the trout stuff where JD and I like to fish, which is high country stuff. But as Sarina's indicated, we have Goulburn tail races, which come out of reservoirs. They're pretty significant trout arenas. There's a lot of feeder streams there that spawn not just native, but obviously trout as well. So the current status is we completed those really, really well, and we attempted to get some funding out of the environmental contribution number 5, and we didn't get any dough, and then we got hit with COVID. So we probably lost a little bit of momentum in that sense, but it still hasn't stopped knowledge and information getting out, and with respective groups. And so where are we going to from here? I think the traditional the traditional associations with the likes of the Verfishers, the Australian Trout Foundation and those particular groups that have been active in this space are really getting some push along from new players on the block. We've got some Ozfish people here. So we've got some really good impetus coming from other groups, and encouraged by the traditionals like Lotse and Verfish, the Future Fish to a degree, and also I think the budding shining star coming in on the scene, the WRF crew, women in recreational fishing. We've got some, there you go Luce, we're in there. We've got some really good opportunities to build on the good baseline work that we've done. There's a new round of funding coming up in about 18 months. And if we can be articulate and we can be vocal, then I think that we can make that happen. The opportunity for us, and I think VIEW is taking the leadership in this to try and bring everything together and be the one voice that connects all the different agencies, whether they are government or non-government, is to encourage anglers to take a role in their community to work through what the priorities are for environmental water, the environment and the restoration and protection and enhancing of the water systems. So for where I'm at, I'm seeing some pretty wonderful things happening. We're building some great relationships with some of the CMAs. We're represented here today by a magnificent man by the name of Steve Ryan, Bluey. He's going to give us some stuff on here. Come on up, bro. I've just been making this up as I go along. I haven't even referred to my notes, mate. I flipping wrote a whole lot of notes this morning. I haven't said anything of them. But anyway, Bluey's going to come up and tell you about a real success story. And my personal opinion is this is a good representation. There's plenty out there. This is a great representation of the work that anglers have done in association with VIEW and in association with the CMAs. That was all right, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Well done.
Well,
cheers, mate.
Have a cook me, but anyway.
That's okay, mate. I didn't even read my notes. So there you go.
Thanks, Tom. And literally, I was just having lunch up there on Monday, and Sarina said, "Can you come and do a case study for me?" So it's and Jared said, "Can you do it on estuary perch?" And I'm going, oh, "Yeah, probably." And I couldn't find the slide, so I've reverted back to Chupong, which is the same story for estuary perch. Long story short, estuary perch is a really highly valued targeted species in the Glenelg River, and we have seen some incredible movements on the back of complementary works like fishways and snagging and things like that, but also connecting the river up back to what it was. So the starter set that I'm going to show you is on Chupong, which is a diadromous fish species, and it does similar migrations to estuary perch. So you could they're very interchangeable. So yeah, it's just a good example of getting things right and selling the story. And to anglers, we do a lot of, as catchment management authorities, we do a lot of reach programs and talking to angler groups and other community groups as well. But I won't go on too much. So this is a picture of the Glenelg River. So this is back in 2009, where we didn't have any environmental water at all, pretty much. A little bit of flow that wouldn't get very far past Harrow, if it got to Harrow, which is, not too far down the river. We also had some fish barriers, and let's just point out that's a fish barrier there. Pretty cool. We didn't spare any expense in doing these graphics. So the other thing you might notice is that's a fish. So that's a Chupong. So we knew there was Chupong in the river, and when you go back and have a look at all the old newspaper articles, there's all these reports of Chupong and native perch and that all through the river, and then they built Rocklands Reservoir, and pretty much those catches stopped. So 2009, we knew there was Chupong in the river. 2010, we had 100% improvement. We had 2 fish. And we still hadn't really started environmental flows. The Murray-Darling Basin, jeez. There was water return back to the Glenelg River around this time, and we were just starting to work out how much, where and when, and that sort of thing. In 2010 and 11, you also might remember we had, it was the end of the millennium drought, we had a massive flood in the Glenelg. And so we didn't catch any fish at all. So just to sort of go back a step. This data is a snapshot of fish species in the river at a particular time every year. And it's collected by, we used to collect it as a CMA, and now ARI are starting to do it as well now. So it's just a snapshot picture, so it's not really rigorous, but it gives you a nice picture of what's going on in the river at the same time every year. I should have said that at the start. So in 2011, we had too much water, and yeah, the fish were too hard to catch. 2012, the same. There was so much water in the system still, and we were struggling to get any catches or reports. 2013, we actually sent down our first proper base flow / fresh events going down the river. And you can see what happened. We had Chupong moving up into Reach 3 and sitting behind that barrier. And we knew that we're on a verge of something really good here with environmental water. But we didn't quite sure, and we didn't realise how good it was going to get. So we actually removed that barrier the next year. Soon as while we were building a fishway, there was fish in the fishway moving up. We could see galaxids and all sorts of things coming up the river. So 2014, tick, we've done it. It works. Environmental water in combination with some really good river health work provided this outcome. It just got crazy. I stopped putting fish on the bat, but pretty much. And we've got other years that express that. Good case study about how good management works, but also this is a really good engagement tool. You take it out to angling groups and you get those aha moments, and I think that's really important in how to tell the story. Like I said, it matches beautifully up with estuary perch, and that perch there was caught 320 kilometres away from the estuary. So in a place called Fulham's. We also, like I said, we just told the Chupong story. Remember, we started with one Chupong. The last couple of years, we're starting to see grayling turn up that haven't been seen in our river for over 100 years. So this is pretty gratifying as someone who does this work, and Sarina and her crew as well. You know, it's really leaving us sort of a legacy in the Glenelg River. So thank you.
Thank you to all our speakers. We weren't sure how many... Sorry? I was just thinking we might just do one table or not a table at all. We weren't quite sure how many people we were going to get to show up today, but we're really thrilled that you're here, and I think that actually this small size will mean we can have a really good discussion about the three main topics that we'd like to explore today. I think probably, rather than, we were going to move everyone around, but I think that probably the best thing to do is to introduce our discussion questions, and we'll start, I suggest, by talking about how we can improve understanding, and this is where I take off my engagement hat and reveal that I used to be a vegetation ecologist who worked a lot with Tom on understanding environmental flows. So this was to be mine to lead, but I think that we can quite safely all jump in together to talk about it. I'm not sure why that just turned off. And then the next question we would really like, to explore this a bit more, how do we best help anglers understand the ways that Water for the Environment supports fish communities and integrates with other catchment management activities to improve waterway health? We've just seen a fantastic presentation from Bluey that shows it so clearly, and I think that's a great sort of lead-in for us to talk about, is that the kind of information that we need to get out? What do people want to know? What have other researchers or institutions understood in their engagement work of what anglers would like to hear? If the anglers who are in the room, what would you like to know? What floats your boat? What are you interested in? Why are you here? What would you like to know about Water for the Environment? And so that will be our first sort of topic of conversation. Moving on from that, we'd like to talk about encouraging the showing of support and sharing of understanding. So if we've got this understanding out in the community, how do we encourage anglers to share it with other anglers, but also other members of the community? And which people or anglers might other anglers listen to? And how do we counter any vocal minorities and or provide balance to different perspectives? We know from some work that we've done previously there can be some pretty loud voices that can get a lot of traction and mean that other anglers aren't so keen to put their heads up above the parapet. Can we get around that? Can we work through it? Can we provide some balance to those views? We'd love to get a better understanding of or get some ideas from you about how we could do that. And finally, Wendy, who is sitting in the back, is our comms expert, and so we're going to tap her expertise as well, and yours, because you're in the front row, talking about which forums we might choose to improve this understanding and sharing. What communication channels are good? Is it community forums? Is it, you know, Facebook groups? Is it inspiring conversations down the pub? Is it fishing tournaments? Where do we think is best for sharing this understanding and support? These topics are all really big and we don't know how far we're going to get through them, and we also would like to make sure that it's not just us picking your brains, that everyone gets something out of this workshop. We're really grateful for you spending your time with us. So if we're having a great conversation and we're really nailing one topic, we may not move on too much further. I'll keep checking in with you to see what everyone wants to do. And the other thing is that if you would like, we're going to be writing up a report for this, just to keep for our own benefit, but also really happy to share it with anyone if they'd like to give us their contact details at the end of the session. I think probably, and we actually don't have these slides because we were going to be talking at small tables. I think probably the best thing for us to do might be to rearrange a little so that we can have a round table conversation rather than me waving my arms at you at the front. So if everyone wouldn't mind standing up, we can perhaps just turn our chairs around and have a conversation with each other, and we'll take some notes and report back at the end of the session and see how we're going. Move on.